Shall I start? I got this microphone, so maybe. Yeah. Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Andrea Bracciali. I work at university in Stirling in Scotland, and I'm interested in blockchain in general. And in particular, I find Algorand and the whole idea very nice, very new, very interesting, very challenging in a sense, and to be discovered. And the idea is very new. I did some homework, and have seen where you have copied this from. So, a bit more seriously, it's quite interesting, in my opinion, to see how close this is to the political organization in the Middle Age, 13th century, in the cities of northern Italy, where they had two ways of selecting by sortition. One was first elect people, and then select those who were responsible for the discussion and the decisions, or the other way around, like you do, first random, and then these are the electors of. And this was working quite well, and now we are going closer to the technology and the questions, for small groups. Problems started to be when the city was growing, there were competing interests, different corporations, and quite interestingly, institutions like the Potestà needed to be introduced to resolve the questions. And even more interestingly for us, I think, political parties were kind of forbidden. So the idea of having a strong, predominant aggregation of people, when this happens, for instance, in Florence, the Medici got the power for 200 years. So translating into Algorand, this is the accumulation, I think, of money in Algorand. So are we risking the same kind of problems about the dynamic of different corporations, and the accumulation of coins, tokens, to make decisions?
So, again, so my answer is no, for the same reason that I said before, because that was the gentleman in the front row question. Because these are not somehow decisions like electing the mayor, or decision who should go to war or who should be part of the army and things like this. So the decision that we are discussing and distributing power to is the decision of somehow generating a block, and if you don't generate blocks with valid transaction, the system dies right away. So the only danger that this stuff has is that somebody gets a majority of money to sync Algorand. But to get a majority of money to sync Algorand, then you have to decide whether it is a rational choice or not. And so if you really want to spend your money by burning your money, and if you're going, that's something that is not avoidable. But it's different from the traditional political power in which, by somehow you putting in power yourself, you enrich yourself. Is not the same. The decision is very limited to a very technical thing about. We only have, you have a block. So let's remember what happens. In a distributed system, the transaction, I send it to 10 people, and each one of them sends to 10 people, and so in 10 hops, they reach everybody on Earth. And Massimo is doing the same, right? He sends his own transaction and things. So at any point in time, I see a block of all valid transactions. I also see bogus transaction, which I ignore. And when I see a bunch of good transactions, these are the transactions that I see. What are the transactions that Andrea sees? It's going to be more or less the same that I see, right? Plus or minus 20%. But plus or minus 20% is a lot, because we must decide with clarity, everybody, common knowledge ought to be what the next block is, right? So that's all we are talking. If we have a process in which Massimo's block wins, I'm happy. I want to make progress. He has seen more or less 90% of the transaction I've seen, and next time he will see more transaction, provided that every block consists of a valid transaction. I don't care if it's his block, your block, her block, and so on and so forth, right? So that is the power is to break a tie. The power is not a decision power. It's much more of a power of figuring out, right, what the next block is. That's the only decision. We are not somehow, nobody can, with a majority of the money, pay or oblige you to pay to him or her or them. Right? So it's a little bit different. And by the way, I agree with one thing with Andrea, that the idea of having random choices was a good idea and is a good idea. That Venice, Florence, actually even Athens used these things. But as cities got more complicated, as Andrea was saying, we saw concentration of power. Why? Because technology was not available. How you run a democracy if you don't have telephones at least, right, and all things like this? Somebody has to conduct these elections, having this ballot box, communicated with things. Is a lot of it. There must be a lot of at least rudimentary communication that the good ancients didn't have. So for them, concentration of power was a must as soon as you go out of 1,000, 10,000 people. Right? Remember, because also the democracy in Athens, women didn't vote, slaves didn't vote, most people were slaves. The voters were 10,000 people. And at that level, you can even go in a single day. The Romans had, these clay pieces that they put in a ballot, one by one, they marched along. It took a while, but at the end of the day, you break the urn and you count what's in there. You have a democracy quite limited. So what we are seeing is that democracy needs technology. And we got great technology in our lifetime. We saw the internet, right? Which was stunning to me, and I guess, for you. Those of you lucky enough to be young, you already were born with the internet, was already there. But we saw what it means. That was really a great revolution. And I think, I'm taking it from Nicola's word, that is really the next revolution, because communication is a must. I can send you a message and you can send me a message. But what the right blockchain is going to give you is the power to organize ourselves, to govern ourselves. Having telephones or messages that go at the speed of light isn't enough. Only allows you to communicate. How about governance? For governance, we need to make a joint decision. We must have an efficient way to decide who speaks and when. We must have a democratic way. We must have rotating ways. We must have sampling. We must have all the things that actually, in my opinion, are part of a blockchain. That would be my answer. I think it is a technology that is going to serve us well, and we go on the walk on the shoulder of giants, the people who gave us the internet, who gave us, right? And so that is step one. And then now we have, I'm very glad that we need to engage with developers or with academic institutions. So to continue improving technology, because the ability to govern ourselves as the world is a good goal. But we need technology, and we need a lot of joint effort to develop the right technology to do that.
Okay, I basically agree with what Silvio is saying. I am Massimo Morini, and it's now 4 or 5 years that I'm very involved in using blockchain technology basically for financial markets. Financial markets are my usual job. I mean, I'm a mathematician in a bank. And actually, I think that there is a point which is crucially relevant for, I think, the community that is here, that I think it's all people interested and curious and passionate about blockchains, And it is the fact that blockchain is really an evolving technology. I mean, for example, if we think of Algorand, we see some real technological innovation that we had never seen in any other blockchain. And by the way, that I really like also because I imagine an application not only in the public blockchain, which is obviously my passion, like for probably every 1 year, but also because I've been involved in many experiments of communities of banks or communities of industries to create sub-blockchains, you know, which are probably less fascinating than the big public blockchain, but in some businesses do make sense. In that situation, it's even more obvious to understand how it is important not to have one fixed panel of transaction verifiers, you know, because in that moment, corruption or collusion becomes a very big suspicion, you know. So both the idea of using random sortition and also the idea of changing the sortition in the committee at every step of a Byzantine agreement are, in my opinion, an amazing improvement to the technology of blockchain, you know. And by the way, it's a technological advance that goes back to a paper about verifiable random function that was 18 years ago. But let me think about something else. I mean, in any business that is related to finance, there is a very big issue about privacy, you know? I mean, people that have a lot of money and do very big transactions are quite interested in not everyone understanding what they are doing, you know? At times because they don't want you to have more information about the market than you have in a private context. And here, for example, many blockchains, I know since tonight that also Algorand is obviously thinking of that, are using technology that allows you to make the verification of transaction without revealing what the inputs of the transaction are, you know. And I was surprised not to see Algorand using this technology because everyone that is now using this technology is basically using a result for which Silvio Micali got a Turing Prize a few decades ago, you know. But again, you know, this is a tremendous innovation compared to the blockchain that we all know. Because imagine the magic. We are used to know Bitcoin, Ethereum, and so on, where actually there is a verification which is somehow distributed, and with the limits that have already been mentioned today. And however, in order to do that, everything that happens in the blockchain needs to be public, you know, and then you have to use necessarily pseudonyms and so on, but still you don't have so much privacy. Imagine a blockchain where actually, let me say one thing. Those that wanted privacy tried to invent blockchains in which basically the shared ledger is only between me and my counterpart in a trade, which is obviously not a blockchain, you know, because there is no possibility to have an independent verification of the transaction and independent validation. Imagine that with technology like zero-knowledge proof, you can have a blockchain where transactions remain private, and yet third-party verificators can actually validate the transaction and add them to blockchain. What is the point that I want to make? You know, the point that I want to make is that we must be extremely excited by the fact that there is a lot of technological development in blockchains. There are no solutions that we see today that are really satisfactory. Only technological evolution of blockchain can make them the great revolution that we are expecting from this technology. I think that's one thing that was at the core of this event tonight, and I really liked.
Hi, I'm Franco Cimatti. I'm one of the first user at the beginning of the cryptocurrency era, before even Bitcoin had a price, and I'm still not understanding everything about this project because it's the first time that I hear, and and I'll probably go deeper when I come back home. And the question was near what he was saying about the fungibility of the blockchain, because I thought that some user that were random selected could be again a target from bad actors to push them on making some bad choice, not because they wanted to do. And so it seems that there are already solutions about this, or to have all the users a better privacy and be protected even during the selection from the product. And the other things is that I am also happy to see that there is an interest to find other developers in the community, and we have also opened an academy in Bologna to find other developers for this kind of projects. We still are at the early days, and my other question is: did you choose Italy for, or are you going in all the other countries in Europe or in the world, or do you think that in Italy it's a good place to find some good developers before other places?
So first of all, absolutely, we need developers. I mean, we have a blockchain needs developers, because if we're, the world is a large and complex places, and not a single team, no matter how good, is going to develop whatever the world needs, because we have very different needs and very new needs altogether. So I think that if we have a common goal of having a blockchain that really serves us on a global scale, we need a lot of technology and new product and new invention. So that is, by the way, absolutely we want. So to the answer is that, why Italy? I have two answers. One is that I'm Italian. That counts to me. And the other one is that actually Italy was always a distributed system. We were doing extremely well when we were a bunch of enlightened, democratic city-states. Nobody could beat us, okay? We had really an island, each one city of democracy in a world which had emperors and things, and we beat them all the time, because the economic output that a bunch of small states, a very democratic institution could have was unimaginable. And very often, somehow, certainly the blockchain is going to be changing the world in which democratizing finance, actually enabling new type of financial tools. Because what people usually think about is, what financial tools do I have in the real world? Now there is a blockchain. What financial tools can I migrate on the blockchain? And that is good. But now we have a new platform. Maybe there are new financial tools that only the blockchain gives us, and there are, that have no counterpart or easy counterpart in the real world. And those are the ones we're going to discover. And it's going to be a joint effort. So, but remember one thing, that the engine of financial prosperity really is good institutions. So we tech people, we like to say, we did it all. Tell you the truth, law and orders and the laws and a democratic system and a court system do even more, to contribute even more, a good institution, right? The fact that, if you have a dispute, you can go to court and having it resolved. These are very good things. So the blockchain obviates to the need to go to court in many cases, makes it unnecessary, which is good, removing simplicity. But the blockchain, if we believe that good institutions are good, has to be self-governance in a way that is good and that we agree and we can see in a transparent way why we govern ourselves this way. So Italy, I think, is the perfect country because of its illustrious multi-century history of being distributed. If anyone can get the value of being distributed, it's Italy. But do I do this only in Italy? No, Because if we want to have, the world is a big place, and if we want to have a global thing, it has to be not only Italy, it has to be Europe altogether, it has to be China, it has to be other continents, it has to be South America. And by the way, speaking of South America, a cryptocurrency that works, that scales, is well-governed and thing, that's a good thing because, there are other instabilities, right? So the world needs, particularly now, in a time in which we are seeing the resurgence of defending walls and trade wars and blocking things. The world needs a currency that is not actually perhaps controlled by anyone, but is jointly controlled by all of us, right? And I think that this is going to have a much more chance to keep us united and prosperous and collegial with one another than all kinds of other defensive financial systems.
Can I add a question on top of this? Thinking to my students and probably many people here as well, I don't know how much you can say, but I'm quite curious to understand a bit better which kind of interaction do you expect between communities and Algorand main house? So are you looking for people to develop part of the infrastructure or applications, or to keep the momentum alive? There is an element of communications and networking as well. Advertising. Could you be a bit more? Someone who wants to do something, where is the starting point, apart from contacting?
Well, remember, so in our society, we need a lot of, everybody should contribute whatever he or she knows what to do. First of all, for sure, we need the development, right? So our responsibility cannot go beyond the layer 1. In layer 2, okay, we'll have our own proposals, but you'll have a better proposal and certainly more proposals, right? More things to do. And another way is certainly to develop a sense of community. If you believe in it, so no community unless there is enthusiasm for having something that somehow we all participate in, things don't take off. So if you have you want to lend your communication skills to a project in which you believe in, first you have to believe. But if you believe, speak out. If you are capable of speaking well, speak well. Advocate, and be an ambassador of things. But first you have to believe. And the second thing of all, and actually, is to say, after developing things, what we want to do? We have a system which is going to be a system of self-governance. I want you to contribute changes to the protocol. Tell us how do we have to change the protocol in a way that we can actually agree and vote directly, right? We can, for any proposal, we can, the same way, by a cryptographic sortition, we randomly in cryptographic select a random sample and we say, you vote, and we record this vote on the blockchain. Therefore, we need good citizens. And a citizen is not somebody only who votes, which, by the way, we count on you to vote wisely every time there is a change proposal. But we also want you to propose things on which you have to vote on. So it is really part on the technical community, on the communication community, on the citizenry, on the community at large to really believe. Because again, if we don't do it, I think that the world is as a very strange place. We have the technology to essentially self-govern ourselves. But we are also at a point in which you realize in which the ugly head of the various egoisms comes back and can actually divide us in ways in which we don't agree to. So I think it's good to keep identity and things, but it's also good, I think, that keeping identity is to collaborate with others. And so if we don't intervene, we may actually end up in a rather different world than the one we want. So all kinds of participations are welcome here.
Yes, let me add one thing that came to my mind while Silvio was speaking. we have to imagine that while now we are in the development of a good, sufficiently good technology of for blockchain, and while we are thinking of a technology for blockchain that will evolve again with a mechanism that has been built in the original design, and this is a very strong view that I really like. We have already to imagine how the blockchain actually will be applied to what are our issues today. And here two things come to my mind. On one hand, it would be very amazing. In a sense, it is already very amazing that a technology like the internet that put everyone in touch with everyone else in the world then ends up becoming a technology where we actually put value in that, in sense of information, choices, inventions, and so on. And this is completely dominated by very few networks. But why we call them networks while there is one single company that owns everything in those things that today we call web networks? You know, those are private companies to which we actually not even sell, not even lend, but just give for free something that used to be ours. You know, it would be absolutely surprising if this one was the only possible future of the internet. And then a second thing that well is very near to what I've spent my life about. I really like to see a bullet in the presentation tonight about giving to people the possibility to have sophisticated financial agreements and sophisticated financial tools. Because we have an understandable but essentially wrong view that a sophisticated financial tool is something dangerous, and so we reduce this danger, giving that to a monopoly or oligopoly of few companies. This doesn't make sense, you know. But the truth is that until today, most individuals lack the technology to deal with sophisticated financial agreements. But one of the fundamental things that the blockchain is going to allow to us is the possibility really to make sophisticated financial agreements available for the needs of people. You know, that's what I've been spending time on research in the last years, and I really like to see these among the big things that the blockchain will allow us.
I think you got it right. In fact, let me just give you an example of a non-sophisticated tool that it really would be nice to have. So you know that one of the applications that people have of a blockchain is somehow the tokenization of assets, right? So let's dream a little bit, and in a sequence of steps, by magic, we are in a situation in which you can actually put a building on a blockchain. Let's think that you are a constructor and you want to put the title of a building on a blockchain. Why do you want to do that? Well, because you can transfer the title with immediate liquidity to anyone in the world. So if I'm otherwise I have to sell it to the local powers, right? I can perhaps not get all the true value of my thing. If I can sell it to somebody in Australia, in China, or something, I have a much larger web of potential buyers, which means, you know, the value of my building goes up. Okay, but now let's begin a step forward, a step further. So assume that you have even Dutch auctions. Well, it's not super sophisticated, but guess what? They are already beyond what you can do. So the government issues bonds all the time. Who participates? Some major banks in the United States, Goldman Sachs, some Bank of America, and things. I cannot directly participate. I have to live off the crumbs of their table. They are feasting on this table, and whatever comes left, maybe I buy something from them, some other type of obligation from them. So think about instead, you are the proud owner of a building. Where you want to put the building, choose a country of the world. Okay, we'll put it in Milan, okay? Assume there is an office building, new office building in a private property. You develop it, and now you want to tokenize. But assume that you have actually the ability to sell at auction. You know what it means? That I live in Cambridge, Massachusetts, and I know that there is a new office building in Milan. Do I have the money to buy it all? No. But if you sell it at an auction, and the auction is transparent, done on the blockchain, I can take $1,000 and participate to the auction. And if I can get is a piece of the building. This opportunity I don't have right now. There is an office building, too bad, it's not for me. But now I win because I'm giving an opportunity that I don't have, and yet not a very sophisticated transaction. Now think about you. It's a win for you too. Because now, rather than having a set of local buyers, you have an entire world of buyers, even people with very little money, but they can contribute to the thing. So your value of a property goes up. Everybody benefits. So by democratizing finance, what do we have? We have only a few sore losers, which are the ones who have kept us at bay from having this available to us. Right? So, and I really believe that with Massimo, that of a bullet is very important, because we want to foster a society of independent people that they reason with their own mind and they contribute with their own mind. But independence starts to a very large extent with financial independence. And it's not talking about, first you're financially independent, then you act as a person in the world. Otherwise, you're already robbed of your individuality in so many ways. So I think that is a good opportunity to us to bring really sophisticated tools to anyone, the rich and the poor, to bank the unbanked. That's what we ought to do. And we can do it. Again, it's a technology of opportunity. The technology is there, but we need to contribute for all kinds of things, by inventing these tools, by programming them up, by advertising and show to have easy of use, so that we don't ever get complicated things to interface, to participate to an auction, or other tools to make it easy to do. I think, but it's a challenge. But things are getting better. But again, we are at a crisis. We can go into a better world, or we can retrench, in which we lose to a few companies our data, our independent judgment, our ability to influence anything, and become completely subservient in some kind of a digital empire in which we will never get out of it. So that is the point at which we are.